You may begin. You may begin.
Good morning. I'm Hillary Atkin, and welcome to our panel, Data, however you might pronounce it, and I will probably inadvertently alternate between the two, is the new lifeblood of media. You might call it the new oil, and we're here to trace its path from the refinery to you and break it down and see what it means. In a world of ever-increasing digital connectivity, massive amounts of data are produced by all of our devices. Sometimes the huge quantity becomes unwieldy and difficult for companies to manage and understand. And that's why many of the companies our panelists represent are in business, to help harness the power of data and the insights it provides to better market, better program, and better connect with the audience. And now for some real-life data. How many people here are in advertising or marketing? Programming? Online or mobile? Gaming? Production? Other. And with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Bill Lederer, next to me, is the CEO of Kantar Video. Mark Ganim, CEO of Trender TV. Next to him, Kathy Hetzel, the corporate president of Rentrack. And then Tom Ziengas, the senior VP of AMC Networks. I'd like to start off with you, Tom, and talk about how you fit into this big, bold world of data.
I'm going to distill it very simply. I make people smarter in my company. And that's what it really comes down to. The research group that I manage and direct is across AMC, IFC, We, and Sundance. We take in data, we synthesize it, we analyze it, we draw insights from it, and we forecast from it. From a very simple perspective, our role is to provide our key stakeholders in ad sales, affiliate sales, marketing, and programming with insights that will allow them to make better decisions, whether it's where you put a program on the schedule, how you sell a program, or how you market that program out to everyone in our media landscape. And from a very simple perspective, that's what I do.
Thank you. Kathy?
Hi. We have a very intimate group here, so hopefully this will be a good dialogue between all of you that are here and participating with us on the panel. Rentrack Corporation is a company that really measures audience behavior from the big screen in theatrical, worldwide box office measurement, all the way through home video with rentals and purchases of videos. And then on the TV side of the business, we have our on-demand essentials, where we process data from every operator, satellite, cable, telco in the US, 90 million set-top boxes of data, 100% market share of all the business in that vertical, and expanding that now to include online usage of video on demand as well as mobile usage of video on demand. And then, of course, we have our linear television product, where we also use set-top box data from 19 million television sets. And our approach to audience measurement has always been about census. So we try to get as much data as we possibly can, process that, and present it in a way that allows our clients to gain information and ultimately knowledge about how they can better program their channels or services, or better promote their movies or their television programs, or also to be able to then use it for advertising measurement across all the screens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Good morning. I'm Mark Ganim. I'm CEO of Trender TV. We basically take a look at engagement and attention around television by analyzing social channels. So we're partners with Twitter, and we analyze Twitter data, Facebook data, and second screen app data to better understand the levels of engagement and attention across different devices and services. It's really nascent. I'd say we're in inning one of understanding this stuff. 3 years ago it was about volume and velocity. Now we're into intent and sentiment and better understanding of character and character whether they're resonating. So early on, very exciting field. I believe that the volume and the level of conversation, and TV always being social, has just been extended really largely through social graphs and the networks around them. So we're spending a lot of time trying to understand that and map it to traditional metrics, i.e. how many, how long, how often, and really understand that behavior. So really excited to be here. Thanks.
Thanks. Bill?
I work for WPP. We are the world's largest media and marketing services company. We are getting close to 160,000 employees. Kantar, within WPP, is roughly a $4.5 billion business. We are the largest global provider of media and marketing research services. Our clients are representative of most of the stakeholders that are in this room. Typically, our customers are media companies, content creators and content syndicators, ad agencies, and marketers. Kantar itself sits smack dab in the middle of the ecosystem, helping you all to tell stories, but typically with more numbers than words. In particular, Kantar Video is a business that brings together, synthesizes online video, mobile video, advanced television, offline data, like scanner data, for example, demographics, psychographics, lifestyles, attitudes, all kinds of things. Again, pulling all these things together to be able to help you all to better monetize your assets, or to help the demand side of the market to be able to figure out how their marketing dollars are working.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to toss out to the panel with the vast array of experience, and some of you have been in this business for decades, and with some companies are new. So what really has changed in the past 5-10 years? It just seems like it's an explosion of change in the whole world.
I'll start that up because I deal with it. So the one thing I will say is I subscribe to, or have subscribed to, data from everyone on this panel over here, except for Hillary, okay? So what I will say is the amount of information data that we deal with hasn't just gone up twofold or threefold. It's gone up 100-fold in the past 10 years. So just think about that. And again, as we look at this, you say to yourself, what's the biggest issue that I'm dealing with? Is at times I feel like we're drowning in data. So it's really being able to filter the information that you need to your key stakeholders. So from an ad sales perspective, we utilize Nielsen data, but I want to layer in not just the quantitative, I want the qualitative. So whether it is social media metrics, whether it is consumer buying information, those are the things that I think resonate most when you're dealing with advertisers and agencies. So to me, it is the volume. It is that we're working with 10, 15 different systems to kind of take all this data in. It's all separate. What we do is we try to harmonize this information and put it together to tell a story. So it's amazing. I started in this business in 1986. They were measuring 10 or 15 cable networks, so 3 broadcast networks. It was simple to really analyze and tell a story of what was going on with the information. It's difficult now.
As vendors, we don't make it very easy for you.
And I will say this, I don't like the word vendors. I consider you guys partners, because that's what it is, and it is. So I will say
As
that.
partners, we don't make it very easy for our consuming partners to be able to make a reasonable assessment of all of this data.
I think the big change is everything's gone digital. And in a digital world, that allows us access to many sources of data that we could never get to before. So we are also in the early phases of now taking all of this oil and putting it through the refinery and pulling it together in ways that our clients want to use it. And you're absolutely right. The first start for our company really was around vertical. So we had a service that was already measuring box office. We added the home video segment, and then we added the the digital, we started on digital with video on demand and started in that segment, and then we started in online, and then we started in mobile, and we have systems for each one of those. And you're absolutely right. Today, in order to get to the information that you want, we hope you subscribe to all of those, but it's not really easy for you to just look at a comparison across the way. So what RenTrack is doing today is we have something called RenTrack Connect, where because we never seem to be able to wait for standards to occur in our industry, we're just going at it ourselves. And what we've done is we have something where we just assign a common number to the content, and then we roll up the content across platforms. Now that's not perfect. There are many more metrics that we want to be able to roll up in that way. But as we start, I think what our chief research officer always says is, don't let the enemy be the let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let's take what we can do today and then continue to expand on that. And that's been the way that we've approached this.
I was just going to say, I was going to echo what both Tom and Kathy said about distilling signal, right? There's so much noise out there. How do we distill signal? And then for the data that we're working with, how is it actionable right away? So how is social data and real-time data inform all of television as it happens is what I'm looking at. So how does it inform research? How can we give them another layer and lens? How does it inform on-air? How does it inform advertising? Can we value media through the engagement and attention taking place besides just reach? And I think it's an incremental lens, not a supplemental lens. But I think for us, again, early innings, but the way we're mapping it out is that we do see that real-time social data can inform almost every part of an organization, from sales to online to advertising to research to each, and marketing effectiveness in a really smart way.
Well, let me ask you, Mark, there's been so much hype and so much buzz about social media, but first of all, there aren't any real standards yet in measurement, but I'm particularly interested in anticipatory buzz about shows and programs. And, you know, for instance, you have a new season of Mad Men coming up, Tom. What does that translate to? How are you looking at that, and what does it mean?
So predictive data, the way I like to look at it is people see things, they feel something, they say something, and can we predict the do? Right?
Right.
It goes around in a little circle like that. We did all the TV pilots from last year, and we measured them and looked at everything around that, and how it mapped out was that the way we're looking at it is early on, it's really an indicator of marketing effectiveness, right? Because the show really hasn't aired yet, so it's really an early indicator of awareness and marketing effectiveness. Once that show hits the air, then you have it at character and plot resonance, and if the whole thing is like connecting with the audience. One of the things I saw recently that was really interesting was House of Lies on Showtime. We also live in a digital world where things sometimes get out before they hit the air, or screeners get out and they get extended, and so on and so forth. So in this case, I'm looking at House of Lies a full month before it's hit the air. It's exploded across the world, quite frankly. It was big in India and all sorts of markets that hadn't been released in yet. But we were able to look at how it was being received, what markets were accelerated. All of that data was being passed on to the networks a full 3-4 weeks in front of it, and they were able to calibrate and act accordingly. So I think those type of things in the wild, or we're also starting to see networks do theater testing where they'll screen a video or a show early on. We pick up all of that as well. I don't think right now anyone can say with authority that we can predict a hit. And the same goes when I came out of the music industry. There is no true technology like that. You know, there's too many variables and moving parts to really dig in.
Yeah, and as Mark said too, we're in the first inning that we are using this data right now, and I think we use it more directionally as predictive. But I mean, we've seen some really good things. So whether it was, a program like The Walking Dead that had a great first year, we started, pulling information before it was going to come on air, and we saw those numbers jump. We felt good when the numbers came out for the premiere, before the premiere came out, that it would do better. Now, how much better? Do you say it's 20%, 22%, 27%? But directionally, we saw that. And we've seen it with other programs too, like Portlandia that airs on IFC. I mean, we saw a lot of buzz about it, and the numbers basically doubled. Now, again, I'm not saying that is the only reason why it's happening. There are other things in the landscape that we also look at too. So, when there is a Netflix deal and there is a library that's put out there, for 4 years of Breaking Bad, and then Breaking Bad airs a new season, you probably brought in some new viewers of Breaking Bad. There are things that we look at that aren't, it's not a silver bullet. It's never one thing that says, this is why you're up 20%. But it does allow us, again, to be, our job as researchers too is to be a forecaster. And one of the big things that we do is, right now, a new upfront is coming up. We are estimating every single program across every single network that we're responsible for AMC networks, what we believe the network will do a year from now. So before it was just looking at Nielsen tracks and trends. There are other things that we're put into the equation now. So there are things like social media that we're looking at. There are things like VOD that we're looking at. So all these things are kind of coming into place, makes us smarter on how we predict.
I wanted to describe another use case for social media and how it sort of ties into this particular industry. So there's work I can tell you that we're doing right now leading up to the Super Bowl, and we'll run a tracking study through the Super Bowl and beyond that specifically links in social media in the context of very specific ad campaigns supporting very specific content for both online and for television, and trying to take a look not so much from a predictive standpoint, but more for those marketers that are spending money to support very specific efforts. What's the nature of the combination of viewing behavior along with the social media commentary? And for many of those of you who are on the content media side of the business, the demand side is asking pretty specific questions. They want to know, do the consumers like the context? Do they like the ad? Do they not like it? It's so sentiment. They want to be able to understand what the nature of influence is, and they want to capture the owned, paid, and earned sort of that complete story around what it is that they're paying for. So predictive is good, but there are other use cases for social media as well.
RenTrack publishes a weekly stickiness index where we look at how long the viewers are engaged based on the length of a program. What percentage of the program do the viewers watch? And we've recently added, with a partner, Bluefin, one of the social media companies, an index that they do that looks at the buzz around those programs. I will say that where we see, it's really interesting to see some of the stickiest programs are going to scare you because they're Matlock and some that you might not have guessed, that people just tune in and they watch the entire program. And so you don't see a lot of correlation between buzz online through Twitter and Facebook and some of the other people that Trender's working with, for example, in those programs. But you also see sports programs with a lot of stickiness, for example, and you do see a very high index of social media against those programs. I can't say that we've really figured out the correlation at this point, but the more we learn about social media, the more excited we are.
So a good example on the challenge that we have for data, stickiness, one person's stickiness is another measure of engagement. Unfortunately, we don't have one measure of engagement. We don't even have 10 measures.
No, wait, you know what?
Many more.
I will say that's exactly it. I hate the word engagement because it doesn't fit into one thing. So we utilize, I would say, 10 different awareness, passion, engagement metrics that are from the different types of data. So, you could look at certain things that we try to correlate, people who watch our programming that go to our website, people that are socially active in talking about our programs, people, that are watching our programs and purchasing certain goods. So there's a bunch of different, when we say engagement, we use IAG, we use social media metrics, we use VOD data. All of them have elements of engagement to it that allows us as researchers to provide to our ad sales folks or our marketing folks to kind of go beyond saying something like 2 million viewers. Well, what is 2 million? What I want to do is I want to say that my 2 million viewers are more engaged than the other person's 2 million viewers. Or they buy product more than the other network's 2 million viewers. That's what I want to say. That's where the layering comes in, and that's how we're using this information now too. So I think as Dickens would say, is it Dickens? You know, the best of times, the worst of times. It is the best of times and it is the worst of times. It is great because I can sit up here and be excited about all this information. I bang my head when I have, we have a staff of 17 really smart people, working with ad sales, affiliate sales, marketing, PR, digital, VOD. We're dealing with all this information, so we have to be smarter. I want my folks, instead of spending 3 hours taking this data and making it look good and then spending 15 minutes drawing insights, I want the opposite. I want to take 15 minutes to get this data and let them spend a couple of hours to really draw great insights. So it's great. So.
I'd just like to hit upon all audiences aren't equal, like you were saying. You look
Right.
for different ways of shaping them. One of the things we've been looking at, and we're announcing in the next week, is that we're partnering with a company called Cloud to understand overall influence of each audience member and the influencers for each show. But now we're assigning an audience influence score. So we're adding up and averaging the total influence of an audience to start to understand whether or not they're more influential than the same size audience. And I think all this data is actionable in different ways, right? Mm-hmm. So you might find a highly engaged audience with a little lower ratings, and there's a different set of decision alternatives that come out of that. One might be window it to digital quicker. In other words, day and date to iTunes, Netflix, everything else, because you know that audience is predispositioned for that type of stuff. So all this data is yielding a ton of different actionable items, whether it's windowing or scheduling or just understanding the level of the audience influence. And just to talk a little bit about what Bill said about the advertising side, the way we're looking at that is three ways. There's social data for advertising effectiveness, which is less so than anything for me in my mind. Not a lot of people out there saying, thank God Coke is sponsoring this Gossip Girl episode, right? But it's there, and it's early on, but we'd like to look at it. Yep. There's valuation, so advertising for valuation. So can we look at an audience, see their influence and affluence, and say they're a more valuable property based on engagement and intelligence? And I think in this year, we're going to see advertising integration, so social integrated into advertising a lot more. It's just very interesting times with a lot of dynamics happening.
I think one of the things that our approach of being census-based gives us the opportunity as an industry to do is to create segments and then overlay information and cross databases. And that's a lot of the work that we're doing today. So for example, in our local station product, and there are many local stations that attend this conference as they look to buy programs, we provide today a segmentation system for auto. We use Polk as a partner there. We provide a political segmentation, which we built ourselves using other sources of data and RenTrack behavioral data. And then we have, of course, Epsilon and Simmons and some of the brand information that is available. But think about what you said about your viewers online who also watch certain things on video on demand, or they may then watch linear, or where do they discover the program, and then what happens after they've discovered the program. What a large database allows you to do is to be able to create segments around the behavior of your own subscribers, your own viewers, and then to be able to look at how they behave across these other platforms. And I think that's where we'd like to go with your company and others.
I'd like to support this point. We're sitting in an industry at the moment that has been built on an incredibly small sample size with an incredibly limited dimensionality to segmentation. And what you're hearing from Kathy, and you should be hearing from Kantar, as two companies that absolutely believe in this idea that you start at the top of the funnel with as close to census level data capture around behavior as possible, and then we winnow down from there. This is a dramatic change from where this industry was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. The reason that we hear about big data, in large part, comes from our ability technically and our desire to want to work with more data in order to create more of this actionable insight. And it just has not been anywhere near as possible or statistically valid to work from these very, very small sample sizes propagated by a company that's not on this panel. So a few of us believe that more is more, not less is more.
Yeah,
So-
but I'm going to say one thing. Being that I worked at that company for 19 years, okay, and I'll say right now, it's
The
Nielsen.
unnamed company.
And the one thing that I will
company.
say is, today, they are the currency. That's how things are bought and sold. You know, they have what I could consider, again, true demographics. That's what people buy and sell off. Again, set-top box data, I love it, I really do. It doesn't have what I would say is a real demographic. I don't want to be modeled, you know, I watch SpongeBob. I don't want to be modeled as a kid 2 to 11, even though that's what I really feel like at times. But ultimately, I think, I really do believe, and it does need to be a mix of both panel and census data to really go forward and do what we really need to do. Again, you know, the one thing I look at is, you know, so I take a look and see when my numbers are down from a Nielsen perspective. So I said, let me take a look, you know, at some, you know, set-top box data. Well, again, currently today, you know, some set-top box providers, one has Dish as one of the, you know, providers of data, one has, you know, DirecTV. You look at those two audiences, they're very different as far as how they view. So that's not indicative of what the total census is. So I welcome people, you know, to come in this space here and challenge Nielsen and be a part of something that's broader, bigger, and better. Because, look, I have a great network at AMC. You know, it's a top 15 network. I have another network that's a top 40, another network that's a top 60 network. You're right. When you start slicing down those numbers in a Nielsen panel, it doesn't help that much. So where engagement is great for me for AMC, maybe a different level of engagement that I use for IFC. And that's why I say there isn't one level of engagement that we use here. It is varied because you have to understand what does that bring to the table.
So I think more competition, more sources of
Sure,
data,
I
as
agree.
painful as it is actually better. One of our big challenges is we've talked about lack of standards, lack of definitions. That's a real problem for us in the industry. Another challenge is Kathy made mention of the fact that she has an ID that she's using internally in order to be able to move across channels of communication. That was my interpretation of what you said.
Correct.
That's a really good example. We don't have an industry standard today that allows us to be able to take a piece of content and be able to identify it across the channels. What happens is we all do these things separately. We don't have a unified taxonomy or metadata.
Yeah.
And it's a huge challenge for us. So as much data as there is, we make it tough for ourselves by not having these standards.
I wanted to throw a curveball out at you guys. Yesterday, Paul Telegdi from NBC said that all the research on The Voice, which was a huge hit, showed that he was going to be packing up boxes and leaving. So it was completely wrong. So I wanted to toss that out to specifically Kathy and Bill. Like, how could this happen? How could it be so wrong?
Probably, one, he doesn't subscribe to Rentrack.
Oh, that was too easy.
Nice. That was a softball, not a curveball.
And then,
Yeah.
but I would say that we do see big differences with a large data set on certain shows, on certain networks. Not necessarily a long-term trend, which would probably pretty closely mirror a census, but a sample currency and a census currency look kind of the same if you look at a trend. The real difference is a show like that where there isn't a lot known about it, and when it first comes out, it premiered, by the way, on video on demand before it premiered on the linear channel. And the numbers were really good on video on demand, as I recall. And it ended up being a great hit for NBC. And so, again, I think that had he had access to different types of data sources, he may have not made that comment yesterday.
I agree with you. They need to do better research. Absolutely. Yes.
But it's a great example of a show where social was baked into the plot line of the show.
Right,
On
right.
our charts, they topped our charts regularly. But I also saw a trend looking at social data with all competitive reality music shows that I think 10 years into this, and I'm really tired of it. I came out of the music industry, so it was like a worst case scenario watching that stuff. But they all take an arc of where it's like the worst people willow down to the best people, right?
Right.
So as a viewer, 10 years in, you get a little tired, and we saw this in our data where we didn't want to see all the pedestrian artists. We wanted to get it down to the final four, and I think you saw that with X Factor over the season, whether it was disappointing overall or not. But The Voice had baked in social at every level of it, right? There was voting. It was really smart advertising integration where I think it was Bing and Verizon sponsored the DMs for voting, where I thought that was a great example of social integration into advertising without just being a direct buy. It was an enabling process. So I like that part of the show as well.
And let's not get caught up too on some of the things that when we look from a research perspective. And this is what I will say. I love social, but social isn't something that is a representative sample of everyone in the U.S. I look at those people being almost your core viewers, whether they like it or not. Because again, I love watching Gold Rush on Discovery on a Friday night when I'm home and relaxing. Now, I'm not going to go there and tweet about it or whatever. I just enjoy it. Now, there are people that are really passionate. They want to know when they're going to find gold next week, or someone that may say, I hate this character. But ultimately, it isn't what I would say, a representative sample. So that's why I say when we look at this information, we do look at it directionally. In most cases, when we're looking at our programs, it is that core 20% that basically make up 80% of all the audience. So those are things that we look at. And I hate to stammer when I talk like this about it because I'm really trying to think of a lot of these things that are going on.
Getting excited.
But really what it is, we're looking at all this stuff now. When you say we're in the first inning on this information, we are. And my job is to kind of understand it. Right now we are subscribing from a Nielsen perspective to their extended screen data, which is really looking at online viewing for some of our programs on AMC. I did it because I want to understand it. I know these are things that are starting up now, but if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to see what's going on ahead of you or behind you. And it's our job as researchers to look at this information. It really is.
Can you share some insights on some of the shows and how you've taken action on the sales perspective and marketing perspective?
Yeah, what we've done, once I got to AMC Networks, I really wanted to make sure we had things that were beyond traditional, quantitative data. So we do subscribe to the Nielsen MRI Fusion, and what that really is, it's looking at the quantitative and the qualitative, attitudes, behaviors, consumption. So we take a lot of that information today when we're going with our ad sales folks, not just talking about 18 to 49s and how it kind of matches to a specific advertiser. We're looking at people who are purchasing certain types of cars. We are looking at people that are buying beauty products for we. So I'd much rather go into an advertiser and say, your consumers, not our viewers, your consumers are our viewers. I think that has so much more impact when you're going into an advertiser and agency because you're really talking about who is using their product and what they're viewing. And that's just a slice of what we're doing across every single one of our networks. And again, I can probably use that information much better with AMC and to certain extents with we, but when I start getting to the lower rated networks that we have, it's more difficult to do. So I use other things to kind of, utilize that. So it could be set-top box data. It could be social data. It could be, things that we look at as far as the, what's going on as far as online and the interaction with our websites. So it's all of these elements that kind of go into it.
I have
I think you're contradicting yourself.
Yeah, I probably am.
Because you're saying that, listen, we're talking about this audience and we have to have people who are 18 to 49, and we don't have real demos in some of these other newer types of data sources. And yet, you're saying what's really powerful with an advertiser is to look at people who have a propensity to buy a BMW, watch this show versus
but I'm looking at it
else.
as men 18 to 49 who are purchasing
Which
that
you
right now.
can do on these. You can look at households that have a man 18 to 49.
Yeah, but my household
and
has
combine it.
2 men that are 18 to 49.
But as long as you're going to purchase a
and
BMW,
my 18-year-old ain't purchasing a BMW. I'll tell you that. I will. He ain't. He'd like to. He'd like me to purchase it, but that's it.
But I
It's not
agree
in the
that
car
demo's
this year.
pretty broad.
It is.
And so what we're really trying to do with these new data sources is not only provide you with that insight going into the advertiser, but then measure against that and post against that on the back end.
I agree and disagree. I'm contradicting myself. Absolutely, yes.
So I have a comment from the perspective of online video and mobile video as it connects to TV. So my background is a TV, an internet guy who went to TV, advanced TV, who came around to online video and mobile video. I'm trying to bring them together. So the difference in that perspective versus what we see on the digital side of the same business is that at Kantar, our behavioral segmentation is made up of 8,000 different descriptors. So where we're looking at in television, let's say more traditional age, sex, median household income, fewer cubes to be able to work with. The difference in digital is faster measurement, dramatically more data, which is a challenge. On the other hand, what comes out of it, much as what you've heard with set-top box data, is the ability to do really deep, interesting, relevant segmentation, where with television, it's not that there's anything intrinsically wrong with it, but from a data collection, flexibility of use, there are real challenges. In online and mobile video, data is more easier for us, it's less expensive, it allows us to be able to do more things faster. And what's happening for us is that on the demand side, for younger planners, buyers, strategists, they're coming from a digital orientation that says, I want much more of this stuff. I want it faster. I want the tools on my desk. And I don't want you to tell me that the show is 18 to 24 and it fits this. You know, here's the specific customers we're after, oftentimes down to literally an IP address or some kind of an ID. We want to know exactly where this person is, what they're doing, how they're doing it. It's all coming together, and it's all good, and it's great for those of you that are on the content creation and syndication side. It means dramatic monetization opportunities for you. But these tools are becoming very sophisticated, and in many ways, digital is pushing the analog side of the business to kind of offer these. At least that's what I think.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to questions. I see you have one. Please step up to the mic.
Hi, my name is Brian Hurst. I have a left field question from a storyteller perspective. In digital, distributed through IP with interactive layers, there's a ton of data that happens. Everything from sentiment to behavior to brand reaction to internal economy to all that stuff. If I'm a storyteller, and I use Tim Kring as the example, and I have 65 million fans around the world, and I now am making a deal for digital distribution, if data is the new oil, and I'm the oil field that you're going to be mining, shouldn't I be sharing in the revenue that's available from that data? I'm just saying. You know, because the way it goes in traditional television is if there's a product integration fee, the storyteller doesn't even get it. It doesn't even go to production.
Yeah.
And the storytellers, we want our independence.
Yeah, so this is an art and not a science. It's up to your power in the marketplace to negotiate that arrangement. I don't think it's for us to judge.
I think you will participate, but in a different way. You won't be making money directly off of the data because we have real costs associated with getting, processing, providing all that data.
Right. Yep.
And we would think that you would be better able to negotiate what the value of that particular property is worth by using that data to your advantage, and that's where you make your money.
Right.
I understand it, but to me that's only one half of the equation, and I'm not being greedy here.
No.
But it's only
Never,
one half
Brian.
of the it's only one half of the equation. The other half of the equation is that storytellers now are beginning to be rock stars on their own, and they carry these audiences. And I do, if you're talking about the oil, I do talk about the abilities. You're going to go sell that data. You're going to use that data in the aggregate or in the specific. You are going to go, yes, I will benefit from it, but you are going to go sell that data. So I think there must have to be some sort of new model or arrangement that compensates a storyteller who is bringing an audience to the table, who is actually within the story directing behavior. So I understand your point of view, but I think there's got to be something in the middle. I don't know where it will net out because, as you said, we're nascent. But I just, I'm standing up for story, and I just think everyone scrambles for production dollars. It will always be that way. And for a production to be able to share in the revenue that's derived from data, not only two things here. You've got raw data and you've got analysis. There's got to be something in the raw data.
So let me be inflammatory. I think your data should be free.
Yeah.
I'll start out from the very beginning and say, you know what? We want to bring more money into this. We're not going to get there by hiking the cost of data so that people can't be able to make reasonable business decisions.
I'm not asking, we can be inflammatory, and I don't want to take over here, but the idea is I'm not asking you to raise the cost of data. I'm asking you to share the revenue derived from it.
Sure.
But there's also, there is the cost of data to do business. And the way I look at it, again, being at Nielsen for 19 years, trying to bring in cable networks to be syndicatedly measured. If you're not being measured, the odds are you're not getting much dollars out there. Once you're part of that syndicated panel and you are being measured, it is basically a membership club, subscription that you have that allows you then for the buyers, the planners to gain access to your data to say,
it's like
should I put money in there?
It's like a cartel is what you're saying.
I didn't say that. You said that.
Let's break it
And I'm
down.
at AMC Networks right now, so bigger and better. So that's why I was saying.
Yeah. I wanted to ask the panel, a tiny slice of this pie is geo-targeting with the data that comes in, like we're at the Fontainebleau in Miami. How relevant is this to marketing and sales, where people are? And therefore, how do you target, what is the benefit that you guys see of location-based data?
Can I make, we are doing something right now to look at one of our programs, working with people, with our agency who has set-top box data, and they're looking at those folks from set-top box data who are watching this program that's in syndication and on other networks, and knowing who those people are. So we can now better market to directly those viewers of that program and say, hey, look, you're watching this on network X, Y, and Z. It's on us right now. It's on at a certain time. We want you to come to us. So that is, if you think about geo-targeting, that's a great way of utilizing geo-targeting. And again, going even beyond set-top box data to look at things, whether it's IP addresses, whether it's looking at cell phones, how about if we're able, and I know Mark will look at this. How about if we're able to look at people who comment positively about our programming and talk to them? Get a list. These are 150 people, 100,000 people that love our program. Get a list.
Those actually exist, right? We're producing those now, but where I found it really interesting, and you had a marketing angle on this, and two projects we did this year that unlocked the value of local through social data was one with the Weather Channel, one with Bravo. And with the Weather Channel, we curated all the conversation around weather and then broke it down by geo, down to almost the block level. So if I'm in Murray Hill and there's a tornado coming at me in New York City and I tweet that, I would see that, right? And so that was unlocking the data for a different way, for creative. And then what happened with that, going back to marketing and objectives, it was that on the Weather Channel, when a weather event happened, time spent was up like 4 to 10 times on the page. Social pages outranked other pages by an order of magnitude. So I think you can use location data for listening and interacting with the swarm, because you can see it real time right now, as well as creative experiences that are regionally specific to your audience.
I think there's one very clear implication for those of you who are on the production and creative side of this business, and that is that through the use of geo-targeting and these other dimensions that are available, the implication is that there are going to be more permutations and combinations of creative that are going to be required to get the right message to the right person at the right time and the right channel of communication. And just like you're hear us basically bitch and moan about the challenges of data, I guarantee you what you'll see in subsequent years here is that there are going to be so many different versions of messaging, whether it's promos or the actual programs or the different ads. And what's going to happen is there's going to be this continuous dynamic optimization going on as we all figure out how to do this a little bit better to get that right message to the right audience. The issue with geo-targeting is to be able to really get it right down so that to the extent that it's appropriate, that it's really, it's geo-specific. And right now, we partners to the industry are not doing a good job of creating a dynamic environment for you to take advantage of this. But we will, because there's a big profit motive for all of us in doing this.
We provide on our systems heat maps that allow you to be able to sort by a specific geographical area, and then you can take that a step further to trading areas.
Yeah.
And we've used the car example a couple of times here, but when you're the local car dealer and the local stations in that market are looking at where the viewership is, what news is being viewed, you can really take a look at the degrees of viewership by using heat maps today that allow you to really start to hone in on some of that target. It's not one-to-one, but it certainly provides, and I don't honestly know if we need to be one-to-one. I think we need to have enough of an aggregate audience that it makes sense to market to them. And this is one way that we've started down that path to allow a simple visual way of understanding the depth of viewing on maps.
One more quick thing, because you said heat map, and that's one of my favorite things. So we're using social data to create EPG heat maps. So you can look at your electronic programming guide and regionally understand who around you is doing what and what shows have the most attention when you turn on your screen. We feel that's a really important vertical to drive data into to help viewer experiences. So when they sit down, I honestly think the TV is going to know who you are in the next 10 years and bring up your EPG and your friend's social graph and what you want to see and default to your channel. We're a little far away from that, but it's starting now.
I'm going to say one simple thing. Make things easier for me. I'm
Yes.
happy.
Okay, on
We
that
live to
note,
make
we are
things
over
easier.
our time. I want to thank everyone for participating. Thank you to our audience as well.